How can sustained employee engagement be achieved through rewards and recognition in partnership with Gift XOXO? I'm Shashi from People Matters and I would be your host for the virtual learning session. Before we start, let me give you a brief about today's topic. As the war for talent continues to haunt organizations, employee engagement is emerging as one of the biggest concerns for HR departments. There is a widespread belief that recognition and rewards play a significant role in building an engaged workforce. An increasingly complex and virtual world throws its share of challenges and opportunities in the space of recognition and engagement. In this webinar, we will explore the importance of employee engagement in an organization, the relationship of employee engagement with rewards and recognition, challenges and effectiveness of programs, trends in rewards and recognition for better engagement. Let me now introduce to you the speaker for this webinar. We have the privilege of having with us Vipin Arora, Compensation Director, Asia Pacific, Honeywell International. Vipin is a multi-faceted HR professional with 20 years of work experience across diverse industry segments and different aspects of HR with a strong hold on policy formulation and performance management. Vipin has key interest in the discipline of compensation and benefits and its applications to drive performance. In his current role, he leads the compensation and benefit practice in Honeywell International, spanning two regions, India and Southeast Asia, in a complex multi-industry matrix setup. Our partner for today's webinar is XOXO. Has 700 plus corporate clients across globe, providing them automated solutions in their total rewards program for the appreciation management, incentive management, rewards and recognition, and engagement. The SaaS platform is equipped with 500 plus brand vouchers and 4,000 plus curated experiences spreading across 6 categories. Some of the exciting experiences are flying a plane, dining on a watch, DJ workshops, salsa classes, and many more. We have saved time for you to ask your questions at the end of the webinar. For those attending the live webinar, you can submit questions at any time during the presentation through the Q&A section. We will try to respond to as many questions as time allows. We have an exciting agenda for the webinar today. So without any further delay, I am going to hand over the webinar microphone to Vipin. Over to you, Vipin.
Yes, thanks, Shashi, and good morning, everyone. And I'm very excited to be part of this webinar today. And I thank you all for joining this webinar, and especially to People Matters for giving this opportunity to interact with all of you. The intent of today's webinar is basically to share some of the thoughts on the topic. In fact, there is a lot that is available on Google or all the material that you will find on the web or books. So the intent is not really to add new models or specific knowledge. There is enough knowledge that everybody has here. The intent is to really explore some of the top items that we have listed here. And as we progress through some of the thoughts towards the end, we will interact and talk about some of the areas where we may get richer in our experience based on the interaction. So in terms of the agenda, while we have talked about the points, I would give a little bit brief of introduction of Honeywell because there would be one or two places where I would share some of the examples, and it would be good to know the context in which I'm sharing those examples. And then we will talk about employee engagement and its relationship and challenges. So if we look at the topic, there are two parts. One is the employee engagement, and second is the rewards and recognition. So I think the good way to start is we understand what is employee engagement. We look at what is reward and recognition and try to link whether there is a linkage. If the linkage is established well, then comes the second part, how do we really improve it? And that's what we will perhaps move through in the webinar itself. So first to start with, a little bit of introduction of Honeywell, the company that I represent. Honeywell is a Fortune 100 company based out of Morristown, Morris Plains, New Jersey. And we have about 130,000 employees globally and working across 70 countries. The turnover is in the range of $40 billion and with 53% sales outside US. For those of you who are not very familiar with Honeywell, it's a high-end technology company, and we invent and manufacture technologies that addresses the critical challenges around energy, safety, security, productivity, and global urbanization. Also, the way we work is to blend the physical products with the software to support our connected systems for improvement of homes, buildings, factories, vehicles, aircrafts, so that there is more safety, comfort, and productivity. So these are this is the domain in which Honeywell operates. And if I talk about the three key businesses, the three key areas of our line of businesses, one is aerospace. Very briefly, we provide technology which helps in navigation of aircraft. And I'm just talking one or two bullet points. There are a lot of products, and the intent is not to really give details about Honeywell. So it's we do produce, say, the cockpit instrumentation, navigation systems, landing gears, and also the turbochargers that you see in the cars and passenger vehicles and racing cars. That's one business, about $15 billion. The second business, which is now we are reorganizing and splitting into two, is on the automation and control solutions. So fire systems, security systems, safety systems, all those kind of B2B products. This is about $14 billion. And then the third business is more towards the chemical side. We provide technology for refining and also have some very, very specific products which are used in defense and domestic usage. In terms of India, we have about 8-decade-old legacy in India, almost $1 billion domestic sales and exports, 15,000 employees. We are spread across 7 manufacturing locations with state-of-the-art manufacturing plants. We have 5 global technology and engineering centers and about 3,000 plus products and solution applications engineered in India. So it's a fairly complex and matrix organization which has multiple locations, different kind of businesses, various kind of industry types. So that's a little bit of background about Honeywell before we really jump into the main topic. Now, when we come to the main topic of sustained employee engagement through rewards and recognition, as I talked about earlier, we will go through what is employee engagement and how do we really link it to the rewards. Now, engagement, if we look at there have been very different definitions throughout, and everybody defines it in a different way. Some say that people are happy, some say people are satisfied. That's what engagement means, and the definitions have been changing over the years. Also, we use engagement and satisfaction quite many times for specifying the same thing. But the important thing is, does satisfaction and engagement, do they mean the same? Are they different? If they are different, how they are different? So I will come to that topic in a while. But first formal definition, as we would have seen, was provided by William Kahn in 1990. And this was in his paper, Psychological Conditions of Personal Engagement and Disengagement at Work, which was about harnessing of organization members' selves to their work roles. People employ and express themselves physically, cognitively, and emotionally during role performances. So this was his definition. And then multiple business gurus gave their own definition. And the recent one, which personally I liked, was through Aon. And it was a very simple, one-line, straightforward definition: the level of an employee's psychological investment in their organization. So that's what they talked about, and I will delve a little deeper into it. But first, the question, interchangeable usage of employee satisfaction and engagement, I thought it's important. many a times we use it, but there may be a different meaning as we look at the definitions. A person can be satisfied without going the extra mile. Whereas in engagement, if we really talk about, the psychological investment helps a person to go extra mile. And that's where the difference perhaps comes in. And we will see in terms of the next slide, if this is the engagement, why is it so important? And perhaps that will further clarify some of this part. So why is engagement really important for us? So we want sustained employee engagement, but why? And there are two perspectives in which we can look at it. One perspective is the employer perspective. And when we say employer perspective, from the employer point of view, the engaged workforce delivers a lot of discretionary effort, the point that I was making earlier, that going extra mile. Engaged workforce typically exceeds targets, there is an increased productivity, there is a much better service to clients, and all these points hit the bottom line of the corporate. And that's why corporate would typically aim for higher engagement. If we look at the additional areas, it would be the staff retention. Engaged employees typically tend to stay more. And also they carry the brand value. Engaged employees are typically the brand ambassadors who carry the employer brand to other places. From the employee perspective, if I am an employee, if I am engaged, there are many benefits that come to me as well. One is definitely there is more self-worth. There is much more value that a person thinks or feels about himself or herself being in the organization. There is a much greater sense of personal satisfaction. Also, engaged employees typically tend to improve the work relationships with the peers and even their managers or supervisors. So that's another area, because we tend to spend a lot of time in the organization or the work area, and if it helps in a better work relationship, it definitely improves the overall happiness quotient, if I put it that way. And the last one is that if it is helping in better output, it also increases the chances of growth. So engaged employees typically may get much better chances of growth because of their multiple things that they would be doing. To sum it up, again, I would refer back to Aon, and this is because it sounded very interesting to me. They beautifully summed it up in 3 words, which meant say, stay, and strive. So when I say means engaged employees say positive things about the organization and act as advocate. The stay means they tend to stay longer with the organization. And strive, they strive to give their best efforts to help organizations succeed. So they have summed it up in a beautiful way: say, stay, and strive, and which perhaps personally to me appealed a lot that it summed it up so beautifully. So this is, till now we have talked about what is engagement and why it is really important. Now, as we look at the topic, we talked about how reward and recognition help in building that engagement. So first of all, we need to explore whether there is a linkage also. And I would refer to again the same study. This is a study that Aon did, and this is 2016 Trends in Employee Engagement. It's a public, it's available on public domain. You may want to look at it. This might give some good insights on the entire topic. So the top engagement drivers, and this chart is about the global 2015 engagement, and they looked at all the countries. The top engagement drivers, if you look at reward and recognition, is the third point in the entire thing. In fact, the engagement itself, employee engagement, was at 65%, which was an improvement of 3 points over the previous year. So employee engagement in the globe is actually increasing as per the study. And when you look at the engagement drivers, the order is given like this: enabling infrastructure, value proposition, rewards and recognition. And then when you look at the bottom side, it talks about what is the largest positive dimension increases. So while rewards and recognition on the global scale is the point number 3, but if you look at the percentage increase or the point increase, this is at the top. So that means reward and recognition is definitely helping in gaining engagement. And if we really bring it closer to home, the second chart, just like the first chart, but this talks about Asia Pac. And when we look at Asia Pac, again the scores remain the same, but in Asia Pac, the engagement improvement was higher in 2015. And here rewards and recognition was point number 2, and the largest positive dimension increase was also on the reward and recognition. So I think these two charts show us that rewards and recognition can actually be very, very effective in getting the engagement, in improving the engagement. Now, if rewards and recognition are really helping, then it might be a good idea to really look at what is really the prevalence of recognition programs, and is there any trend in that, and how are companies really treating it. So this data is really the word at work data in terms of trends in employee recognition. So if you look at this thing, this chart, it talks about that the prevalence over a decade has been almost quite same. So the left-hand chart, if you look at the prevalence of recognition program, which means the percentage of organizations which have some kind of recognition program, it is quite similar. So at least 2005 onwards, it has been in the range of 89-88%, barring 2011. And the kind of programs that are offered or which are prevalent, if you look at the most prevalent or the most popular program is length of service, which perhaps almost every organization is keen to launch or keen to have. And then comes the above performance, which is like related to some of the output of the employees. And then comes the specific behavior related areas, and then peer-to-peer and retirement. So this is a very, very brief snapshot of how are really the organizations looking at the recognition program. Now, let's come to the crux of the discussion. What are really the challenges that impact effectiveness of the program? Now, if we talk about any kind of reward program, there are multiple things that come up. And one of the key challenges that we see is really ownership of the program. And the ownership becomes a challenge. In our context, it could be even looked at whether the ownership is by the HR or the business, or it's a joint ownership, is the top management there completely aligned, whether the alignment of the program is with the goals that company wants to achieve. So this is one of the key areas that also sometimes creates concerns and becomes a huge concern, especially if the alignment becomes a challenge. So what happens if the company is trying to promote a particular behavior or promote a particular kind of performance, and there is an inconsistency versus the goals, or if there is no clarity, then there is an issue, and that's where the programs start getting completely derailed, because the employees don't see it the way these programs are designed to work on. Now, the second challenge could be more administrative, which is in terms of the nomination approval process. The process itself could be so difficult that people may think that there are multiple layers of approvals and it requires a lot of areas. And I can also share, this is something that we also experienced in our company in one area, and we have made some certain changes where we realized that for certain kind of award, there were hardly any nominations. While people said that there was less recognition in an area, but when we launched a program, we found challenge that people were not nominating. Initially, there was for a quarter or so, we could get nominations. And then when we tried to deep dive, we realized that most of the people didn't want to nominate because they felt, why should I develop such a big business case? Why should I really create so much of trouble to do it when it will be difficult for me to justify? There will be so many levels of approvals, and the process seemed very cumbersome. So this is another area when, with all right intent, with all the right kind of alignment, but still the user friendliness in the process becomes a challenge. The third is inconsistent definitions of criteria itself, and sometimes recognition is not administered properly because different line managers or different people use different definitions, and it may cause much more heartburn than really recognizing somebody. So you want to recognize one person, but there are 5 other people who may think that we did the similar job or maybe much higher value job, but we were not recognized while this person got recognized, maybe for whatever reasons, just because his manager liked him. So the definitions of the criteria is also extremely important. And the other challenge is a varied administration process. Maybe I will pick it up in with the bottom part. And then the other part is reporting capability. Again, reporting capability and cost concerns, these get very, very important in very large organizations. So, and again, let me just explain it with the last part that I would be talking about specific challenges. And loss of excitement is when your program hasn't got refreshed for a long time. So the program stays the way it was for maybe many, many years. And then there is absolutely no novelty in that program. Then it also starts losing excitement, because some of your good performers or people who demonstrate very good behavior, they may have got some of those awards. And if they are staying for very long, maybe 5 to 10 years, they would have got some of those awards earlier. And if there is absolutely no change in terms of the kind of awards, the excitement level starts dipping down. So these are some of the generic challenges. But again, if I go back to some of the larger organizations and try to put some of the challenges, the challenges also get much, much bigger. Now, first, let me talk about the point, varied administration processes. For example, and again, I'm taking Honeywell example so that it gets a little more clear. If there are 3 business segments and the business segments work completely differently, and then you have different geographies, Asia Pac, and then EMEA works in a slightly different way, and any process that you want to change in EMEA requires work councils, approvals, and all that thing. We all know how Europe works. And then Americas works in a different way. Now, apart from that, sometimes the administration part, even if you have the common process and policy, the administration part, for example, small things, the nomination, the tools may be slightly different. Sometimes the way you process maybe the award amount, if it is an amount, it goes to the payroll. Even that process may go a little different, because some of the features may be different in a particular country versus the other country. So the administration process may itself become a challenge. To add to other challenges, one of the key challenges we face, and maybe some of you might be facing if you are present in many countries, if there is a project team, for example, there is a project team which is a cross-country project team, and they have worked very well on a particular project and delivered it very well. Now, it could be reward, it could be recognition. So either you are trying to talk about the monetary part or maybe even recognizing them in a various forums. Now, how do you really decide the amount? Let's say everybody has to get $1,000 for that project very well executed with the kind of values that the company has. Now, $1,000 for somebody living in India on a base salary, again, hypothetically, a base salary which is say 1/3 of America's for a particular level. It could be half or whatever. So I'm not really getting into that. But what I'm saying is, at a different base salary contributes to a different percentage versus a person in US or maybe Germany or Malaysia. So when you're talking about this cross-country project, and suppose the $1,000 is the team award and everybody gets $1,000, then it means very, very different amounts to people based on their salaries and the countries they are staying in because of the cost of living. So this becomes a huge challenge. Do you give the same amount? Do you give the amount which is equivalent in terms of the foreign currency, or how do you do it? And that becomes a huge challenge. We also faced a similar challenge at some point of time. And similarly, other awards. I just talked about the team award, which creates more hassles, but sometimes it could be even the individual award. So that's one challenge. Second is also virtual work groups. In a typical multinational setup, you don't know who wants to be recognized at what level. For example, I'm just taking an example of a small department. For example, I take corporate communication. In any company, it would be 1 or 2 or 3 people. Won't be 100 people versus the engineering department. Now, that group, suppose you reward that person, you don't know in terms of reward is one part. So you gave some kind of amount, you gave some kind of maybe publicity, but you don't know whether the person feels extremely recognized in the group of, say, corporate communications, which is global, because they fall under the same manager or super manager's domain tree, and the person feels more recognized when you present the award in that group, because that's a work group, or the person feels more recognized in the group where the person is locally seated, with the people with whom daily this person meets in the lifts or maybe goes to the cafeteria together, and the person feels, if I am presented award here locally or recognized here, I would feel good. So these are the challenges that you sometimes feel, and as we are getting more and more virtual, I think all of us are getting more and more virtual, these kind of recognition challenges also have started emerging. So moving to the next part, so how do we really improve some of the effectiveness of these programs? And again, I've summed up in 3-4 areas. Again, there could be enough literature about this, but very key points which personally I think are extremely important for effectiveness of programs. One is very, very specific and objective definitions. And when we talk about that, it means that people have to understand or relate to the recognition. So the employee who is getting nominated has to relate to the recognition, that this recognition is specific for this particular behavior or maybe output. And similarly, people around that person should be able to understand that. So that specific part and the objectivity part is extremely important, because that's what creates the effectiveness. If people are not clear, if it is not transparent, then it creates sometimes much more hassles than really the purpose that we are trying to achieve. And this all impacts the engagement. And when we are talking about engagement of employees, it's not only the engagement of the person receiving the recognition. We are also talking about the people who are around. No corporate wants that the person who got the award feels engaged and others get disengaged because they feel that the organization is unfair. The second part is the relevance. It is very, very meaningful when people are able to relate to that behavior and they find it that there is a big picture to which they are able to connect to, that they are able to see that whatever contribution that made was very, very integral part of the success of the team or department or the company. The better explanation of that bigger picture, the much bigger understanding of or effectiveness of the program. The third is really the timeliness. And many times we have bigger structures in terms of where to award, whom to award, how to award, and sometimes we lose the sense of timeliness. I can just quote one example, and one of my ex-bosses, and I can't forget the quote he told me, and I thought it's better to share here. He just told me that always think of recognition as if it's your birthday. So somebody comes to you and gives you one flower on that birthday and says happy birthday, you will feel extremely delighted. Somebody comes to you after 1 month and gives you a bouquet of flowers, which is 10 times of one flower, and then says belated happy birthday. That day I couldn't give it to you. What would be your response? So I think he summed it up very well, and I thought to share it that perhaps this is one example where we need to look at that. Can the time part be extremely looked at in terms of the effectiveness? And the last one is really innovation and novelty. Extremely important because otherwise people get used to a particular kind of award and then they completely get bored of it or tired, or there's a fatigue that starts setting in, and after some point of time the effectiveness starts dropping. Now, I'm in the last section of the entire presentation, and I think we will talk more about things later, and which is about the trends in recognition. And I do see a couple of questions on the panel, but I think I would take it up once I finish it, because otherwise I will have to go back multiple times to the previous slides. I hope that's okay. So some of the trends that really caught my attention is one is the social recognition, and then social recognition answers many questions, the challenges that we were trying to talk about. So in my earlier example, where I talked about we don't know which group the person feels good about being recognized, the social recognition is, and using technology to get that, is extremely important. So today, if I give Honeywell example, and again, we also learned it over a period of time, the platform that we use, and I know the slide you may not see it, and intent is not to show the wording, but on the picture, if you see left-hand side, there are people who have written comments on somebody's award achievement. So the idea is when somebody gets recognized, and in a global company, when somebody gets recognized and there is a flash there that this person has got this kind of award, you just don't know. It's like your Facebook or LinkedIn or any other kind of maybe social platform, and people recognize from all walks of life, of course within Honeywell, but from all walks of life in Honeywell. And that's something that most of the companies are doing these days. And this is one of the trends, using the social media or using the internal media for the recognition. And it's extremely important. There are certain things why it gives us a very good edge. One is that the social platform helps in building the organization culture. Now, what it means is that it tells people what the good really looks like. Because when you are putting an award nomination or recognition nomination there, you are putting the citation very clearly, and you're saying this is a person who is getting recognized for helping in, say, promoting a particular behavior or value of the company, or achieving something very significant. Over a period of time, when you're doing it again and again, people start understanding what good looks like. What is that good that company appreciates? So there is a much better transparency in reward and recognition. That's one of the biggest advantage to the organization. The second part is for the employee. The gratitude gets amplified multiple times. It strengthens the impact of the moment by congratulations all across. Then when the recipient has got the award, gets congratulations from multiple places. So the whole gratitude gets strengthened. The impact gets multiple times. For the same, I would put it, for the same event, you are getting manifold advantage of that. The third point is it promotes social interaction within. When we say social interaction, what happens? It gives you a much better feel-good factor, and that's why it starts developing positive relations across workforce. So there might be people, if I am an employee getting an award, there might be people with whom I may not have interacted for a long time, because there might not be any transaction for a while, even though I may know them or whatever, just a hi, formal hi sometimes. But when they do it, then it opens up that social interaction again, and it's much more easier for me to interact with them and then start that friendship again. I would say not friendship, but maybe a much more work relationship again. And the last one is it reinforces values and brings to notice people practicing those. So there are people who are practicing those values of the organization. They get much more notice. So this is one of the biggest advantages of social recognition, and I think this is one of the key things that is happening maybe for past couple of years. The second is analytics. Now, again, technology, and when we talk about analytics, the analytics gives a very good edge for the management to really look at. I do see one odd comment that people are unable to hear. I don't know if the sound is breaking or it's for specific people.
So Vipin, this is for specific people. Our technical team is sorting out that issue.
Okay.
So you can continue.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Then the technology, again, to the management, it's a very good tool, because then, and when I'm talking about reporting and analytics, it's really beyond reporting only. So I think everybody had been doing reporting part earlier very well. So we all have been trying to look at how many awards are being given, what kind of areas, what is the amount we are spending. But now the analytics additional part which has helped is really in terms of data on the effectiveness of programs. I think the biggest advantage of that is to find patterns. Which values of the organization are really lagging and which are resonating more with people. So if I'm able to get that data, for example, if I say my company has 5 strong values that we are promoting day in and day out, and most of the rewards and recognitions in the last 1 year are related to a particular value. Let's say that value is towards business ethics, or maybe that value is towards customer satisfaction, whatever, and I'm just throwing names. Then the entire organization this value is resonating more. But there could be certain values that I am not able to really push forward, or people are not able to demonstrate it, or not being able to show or get anything extra in those areas. And the last one is really in terms of the key talent metrics about culture and performance. Now, why these things, this is important, is that we get, and again, these are more from the management point of view, that all these metrics, all these analytics help us in finding out what is the level of involvement of people in the reward programs and the ROI. And again, engagement on these aspects is completely related to the effectiveness of the program. Coming to the third point, and this is something again quite interesting, and this is if anyone has read from SHRM Globoforce Employee Recognition Survey, one of the key trend is value-based recognition programs. And this is a very interesting topic, that if you look at from 2012 to 2015, this is the second point I'm referring to, the share of value-based recognition programs has increased by 8%. Now what it talks about is, beyond the traditional way of recognizing people only for the output, this is one area where the companies are talking about the values, and those programs, the share of that program is increasing. And why it is increasing is because it helps in building a very strong culture and contributes significantly in the bottom line. And this is one of the big trends. Again, I don't have a lot of data, but I think this is one key thing that would be changing in future, because this will help in engagement. The graph below actually shows a very interesting phenomenon, where you look at, in the red, there are organizations which have value-based program, and in yellow, the organizations which don't have value-based program. And if you look at the employee engagement gap, this is very significant, 90 versus 67. And I picked up a couple of key dimensions from that survey. Again, it's a report which is available in public domain. If you want to read more, you can do that. But look at the contrast there, and look at even for the employee retention, 68 versus 41. Happiness, relationships, all the areas, the gap is very significant. Now, if this is the gap, and if there is a kind of 8% increase over last 3 years, I think this is going to be one of the things for future, where companies may start moving more and more towards the values-based programs for increasing engagement and retention for sure. And what it essentially means is that the balance between what and how. So what is typically in terms of what a person achieves, and how do you achieve it? That's a balance that might be changing soon. And if I take example of Honeywell, in fact, most of the recognition programs that we have now, in fact, all the programs that we have, they have to be tied to one of the values. So if somebody has achieved a business metric which is beyond, maybe gone extra mile, beyond maybe 120% or something, but it has to be attached to a value, whether it was the customer linkage that the person was working on, whether it is really related to the some sort of productivity gains, or maybe there is something which is related to making people much better, or so there are the areas that the company has, and then these need to be linked to that. So that's one of the things that I think is important. The last one is really the fun part, and this is again one favorite, and I would also I would just talk about it, and then maybe our sponsor for this program is also giftxoxo.com, and I found a couple of things very interesting there. So one of the things that is there is that the people value experience much more than the product itself. And experience is something that is not forgotten. So when you look at the new trend, or maybe things, when we talked about novelty or new programs or anything that we talk about, so the experience could be, say, adventure-based experience. Or so adventure is something, it could be anything, like somebody wants to go for a car outing, or maybe scuba diving or anything. Hobbies and learning, it could be music, it could be dance, it could be health and wellness related, and sometimes the luxury or maybe this is my own term, perhaps never on my own kind of area. Say, for example, if it's a very, very luxurious kind of dinner that maybe a person may not have tried, may not have experienced, or maybe may not want to spend money there. But can there be, if there is a program device to that, say for example, the family dinner in a maybe 5-star, and this is one of the common things that somebody could have done, or maybe a timeshare or a vacation, or maybe it's a good interest for me. Say, for example, I even saw one of the example of somebody wants to attend pilot classes because wants to fly a glider, but it's too expensive and I don't want to do it. Again, I'm not saying these things can be done for that every example would be suitable for every position, but those are the areas that can be looked at. And the last one is philanthropic. And there are areas where people do have very strong association with, say, NGOs, or maybe the kind of maybe sectors, health, education, and other areas where they personally want to contribute, but may not be able to do that because of various reasons. And so these are the areas we can look at. So the experience that comes in, because we have been doing the generic awards for a long time, certificates, trophies, cash vouchers, some kind of merchandise, but the experience part is missing, I think. And I can give you one example, and again, I won't quote the name of the company, but I remember there was a group of 4 people, and in one of the companies I've been working with, we gave, say, for example, Club Mahindra membership to the people. Now, they would on their own not have bought it because it was costing 4-5 lakhs or whatever, 6 lakhs, I don't remember the amount. But then when they got it, the families of those people, because they could experience it not only on that day, but they could experience it for the next 20 years. And the kind of bonding that it created, in fact, at many instances, these people came back and said that what a kind of maybe lifestyle product you have given to us, because this is something my family just loved it. And you could have given me maybe a bonus award of 2 lakhs, I wouldn't have spent there. And but the experience itself is so good and it's repetitive. So the idea here is to talk about some of these things and to explore whether some of these ideas can be looked at. So I think I will move to the last slide. I know in terms of the time pressure, we have just maybe about 15 minutes to answer questions. So just to sum it up completely, the essence of the entire discussion, one is that rewards and recognition definitely help in boosting employee engagement. and we should use it as a tool. Now, the programs, and we talked about the challenges and other things, the programs really require a well thought through framework, and in terms of the administration, in terms of the linkage to the goals and alignment. The third part is the communication with the employees, the communication of the intent of the programs, the way the programs are administered. And fourth point is usage of technology. We are lucky to have technology with us, which can help us in getting all kinds of support. In fact, now we have also launched our programs on mobile apps. So because if somebody is traveling and can nominate a person at that time of travel, or maybe even respond or congratulate somebody on the mobile app itself, the technology helps in a big way. And the last one is really experience matters. When I say experience, that the recognition, the whole impact of the recognition is the experience. So it's not only the amount, it's not only what we are providing, the way it is being done, the mode of providing it helps in getting the right kind of engagement. So I think this is summing up all the discussion, and we can move towards some of the discussions on question and answers, and any comments or views anybody may want to share.
Thank you so much, Vipin, for the wonderful session. What a learning session. We have started receiving questions from our audience. So we'll be just moving on to Q&A section. And the first question coming up is from Ishwaran. He's from a manufacturing company handling multi-generational workforce. So his question is, in a manufacturing company, what do you think improves employee engagement? Is it the rewards and recognition schemes, or the connect with the senior management and supervisor?
Okay, thanks, Ishwan. See, it would be a little difficult to answer very generic in this, because every company has a different kind of setup and the kind of maybe the culture and everything. But one of the things, based on my own experience in manufacturing setup when I was working in factories, is that personally I feel the mode is extremely important. While we may say that especially operators and workmen, they may be much more inclined towards money, but my personal experience is the mode with which it is given, the gratitude, the way, the sincerity in management while offering that award, versus this is one of those quarterly town halls and I will call 5 people and give it on the stage. I think that changes a lot. So my view would be that while it's important to have the monetary part, but the recognition part and also the dynamics at sometimes are very different there. In terms of the need for recognition is very different. It is much more localized. So we need to see in that group how it works. The second thing which personally I think is important is, especially at the junior management, or rather in junior management, if I talk about the workmen, anything that touches families helps quite a bit, not only in the recognition and engagement part, but also the employee relations part. Because the worth of a person, when the person goes back to the house and shows that this is my worth in the company, helps in a very, very big way. So that's my answer. I know it's very difficult to give a very, very specific answer, but I'm just sharing some of the experience that personally I had.
Thank you, Vipin, for taking up Ishwaran's question. I'm sure Ishwaran has got a couple of key takeaways to implement in his organization. In contrast to Ishwaran, our next question coming up is from Shelly. She's from, so she wants to understand, in a small organization wherein monetary benefits cannot be focused on much, what kind of other rewards and recognition can be implemented? So some non-financial rewards and recognition policies or practices which small organizations can implement.
Yeah. So great. I think again, it's my view, but I think it's recognizing is much easier in a smaller organization than a bigger organization. And having experienced both kind of setups, one of the key reasons why I think smaller organization recognition is easier without spending too much money is because in a smaller organization, people have much better social interaction with each other. So the people know much more each other, and they have sort of some kind of relationship or even interdependence with each other, versus a very large organization where it is very difficult to see that part. So just to give an example, if I talk about again my own company, Honeywell, and there is a person in aero business versus another person in chemical business, honestly, if they don't even say hi to each other, then their lives don't change at all, because they're so different in terms of the industry types and the way that they are working. But in a smaller organization, it's much easier. I would say again, we need to convert that constraint towards our advantage. So the close-knit organization, people knowing each other, maybe the smaller groups can celebrate it in a much better way, because again, I am assuming if it is only at one location, maybe you can have those kind of maybe town halls or maybe meetings or maybe a weekly or whatever fortnightly kind of thing where people can be recognized, things can be put on notice boards and people can be called, and then personally the senior management can walk on the floor and recognize the people there on the spot. There are many things that can be done. Apart from that, there are many new things which I talked about in terms of the experience that you can share with the people. These could be again in terms of senior management person going calling the person for a lunch or coffee, and the person gets that opportunity, or sometimes even giving that opportunity to talk about something if it is a very subject matter expertise kind of area. Not only going the citation, I would typically call that person and say, why don't you say a few words and tell people what great job you have done. So I think recognition can be done in many ways, but again, very specific to the organization and the culture and the kind of industry type you are. But I think it would be much easier. The larger organizations face much bigger challenge in terms of recognizing people and perhaps have to spend more money.
Thank you, Vipin, for sharing the examples which small organizations can implement as part of their rewards and recognition policy. Building on Shaily's question, next question coming up is by Manisha, and her question is, while designing a rewards and recognition program, how does one decide on the budget and target coverage for the program? Very important asset.
Yeah, in fact, there's a lot you would find on net and books also on that. But again, I think one of the important thing is to really look at what is the goal of the organization. So if the goal of the organization, and it may depend on the which stage that organization is in, if you are building a new organization, perhaps your goal at that time is to really get certain financial metrics, also build a kind of culture. So then you know what all areas you want to promote, you know what is the kind of people or headcount you have. You may then decide the budget, that how important is something and what kind of budget you may want to put in to promote those activities. It's something like when you are talking about branding yourself in the market or marketing budgets, again, it's not very similar, but what I'm trying to say is the things that you are trying to propagate in the organization, how important they are, and to what extent do you want to do it in a particular year or phased or maybe on a continuous basis, will help in deciding that. No easy mathematical formula. I would suggest maybe you can just maybe look at some of the literature available in terms of helping you if you need any kind of formats or things like that. But have to start with the goal of the organization. What do you want to recognize? Do you want to recognize long service of people? Do you want to recognize a particular behavior? And what is the kind of how important is it to management to push that goal? And it may change year after year. The budgets for recognition may change year after year. Sometimes, while you may have the overall consistency in the programs, but even the themes may change depending on the business situation that you are trying to promote. So the budgets may actually vary from year to year as well. I don't know if it answered completely, honestly, but I can just give you a starting point to create the budget.
Thank you, Vipin. I guess Manisha has noted her takeaways for her query. Our next question coming up is by Aarti, and she wants you to share some insights on streamlining the nomination process for various categories of rewards.
Okay. I would say, again, let me just try to explain it with an example, what we did it at Honeywell. So first of all, we decided various category of awards. So let's say tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what are the various categories of awards, and try to look at the dimensions with which a particular definition of award would be there. So for example, my lowest category of award, or which could be maybe non-monetary kind of award, could be more like peer-to-peer. Now, when it is peer-to-peer, it may only be recognition. There may not be money attached to it, but it's a recognition of somebody helping me out, going out of the way, helping me out at the time when I need it. Next category of award could be when a manager nominates in a small work group, or maybe anybody can nominate when a person has done something. Say, for example, again, I'm trying to put some metrics. Say, for example, a person has achieved 110% of the output, or maybe has led to then you need to link it to the organization goal. So if my goal is as an organization that 10% extra sales, or maybe 5% additional customer satisfaction, or maybe showing a particular behavior internally, saving in the cost. So I need to tie up with those dimensions at every level of the award. And then the nomination process may tweak, or I would say approval process may get tweaked a little. So if I talk about Honeywell, say for a peer-to-peer nomination, I don't need approval. Somebody has done a great job to me, help me out, I just do that, and then I nominate a person, explain why I'm giving this peer-to-peer recognition, because this person helped me out, gone out of the way, worked on a weekend to help me out for some data I needed, and then the nomination and approval is the same. Maybe next category of award, the nomination can be done by the person who is either a manager or a colleague or someone else, and again we use technology to do that people can nominate. The approval could be with, say, for example, a person who is either his supervisor or somebody senior who can verify that claim. If somebody has said, I want to nominate my peer because this person has got 5% additional sales, then the approver has to be a person who can actually vet that claim that yes, this person has delivered that, and it was not just because something changed in the environment. Or maybe if it's a value, if I'm saying this person has shown extremely good value of maybe making people better every time, and this person has helped in generating that kind of teamwork, and we progress very fast because of that work. So somebody has to do it. So the level of the nomination process is with the initiator, but technology helps in taking the workflow of approval chain depending on which category of award is there. And to do that, it's important, first of all, the structure of awards and the alignment with the goals is clear, so that at every level, the workflow takes to the relevant level for approval, for reward and recognition. For the recognition part, however, after the award amounts are confirmed, the recognition we still try to do exactly the same way on the social platform, and everything else is followed. Maybe for very high category awards, we reinforce it by maybe calling the person again in a forum, or maybe at certain levels, senior management again congratulating a person in a forum and all. So we may reinforce, but some basic level of recognition, maybe 80% of level of recognition could be the same, because recognition doesn't cost you money, and you would like to do it to the max.
Thank you, Vipin, for answering Aarti's query. We have so many questions. So many questions are still pouring in. So our next question, which we'll take, is by Shirin. Her question is, she's from a multi-generation workforce, so her question is in that context. Have you seen any difference in preference in experience versus product based on generation?
Honestly, I don't think this is a way that we have been doing a lot of experience-based things for very long. But one of the things I would say is that experience, and again, that's my personal view, because I have seen everybody getting excited about the experience irrespective of age. because the choice of what experience do you provide, that you should change the generation. So if I have to do that in my organization or anywhere, I would perhaps not take away experience and say up to this level or this age I will give product, and after this level or age I will give experience. I will just change the mode of experience for that person. For example, and that's where I need to know my workforce very well. What are their needs, which bracket, what are their aspirations? And again, for example, if it's an unmarried young person, I may want to give an experience of a hobby class that this person perhaps never did. Again, depends on budget. So if my budget is say 1 lakh rupees for a particular reward, I may also try to give it more like, say, I know this person always wanted to say go for a particular hobby, or maybe always aspired for something which the person may not do on his own, because that experience will last entire that person's work life. Whether that person stays with the company or not, that person will still quote about it ever. Similarly, if there is a person who is maybe now middle-aged or maybe in the family responsibility or something, my experience level for that person may change. Again, I'm not trying to generalize or stereotype, but I need to know a little more about the people to provide that experience. And for senior management, it could be something very different, which is a luxury kind of maybe brand that I may give to a senior management person. So I would say, is there a real data? I don't know. Maybe some of the companies who are providing experience-based, even I would say GiftXO.com, which is our partner, they are also providing some of the experience-based products. I don't know if they have really got the data in terms of what is the delta between these two. But personally, I think that experience lasts for life, even beyond your organization. And the kind of experience should change, not that a particular person should get product versus other person gets experience. That's my own view.
Thank you, Vipin, for taking Shireen's question. We are running out of the time. We still have so many questions. Everybody actually wants to take this opportunity to clear all their rewards and recognition queries since you are here. So Vipin, we would really request you to take the questions offline for our audience so that we can circle back your reward to them.
Sure, that's perfect.
Great.
And I guess I know there are a lot of questions and there is a time constraint. I would have loved to interact and talk more about it, but yes, we have to work within the time constraint. So we'll see. We can connect offline.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Vipin. And with this question and answer session, we are going to wrap up today's webinar.